Happy New Year, everybody. It's Dr. Artist and the Dr. Artist Show. I hope everybody had a great set of holidays amidst all the tragedy and evil going on around the world. Today's show is going to be very significant, and I want everybody who's around the world that tunes into our shows to share this with everyone you know, because it's extra important that everybody knows what's going on behind the scenes that you're unaware of. So we're bringing guests on today to actually expose some horrific things. Before we get into who that is and what's going on behind closed doors that's affecting millions of people around the world, we have two sponsors for our show, the North Texas Healing Center. The North Texas Healing Center, first and foremost, is a clinic that actually is set up to focus on eliminating and identifying what causes symptoms and disease on your behalf or any of your loved ones' behalf. You can contact them at the northtexashealingcenter.com. You can even call them at 214-705-9369. If you are struggling, these guys use multiple types of therapies and modalities to help identify what's the underlying cause for your symptoms and diseases. And they will help you one at a time identify what those causes are and help you free yourself of those symptoms you're struggling with. Our second sponsor for the actual Dr. Artist Show is Mike Lindell's own MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell has given me and our audience a promo code, DOCTOR, D-O-C-T-O-R, or the abbreviation DR. If you go there and select any items like pillows, towels, dog beds, slippers, you name it. My favorite thing are his towels. Go there, they're phenomenal. Dr. D-O-C-T-O-R at checkout. After the things you select, you get up to 66% off of anything you order there. Thank you, My Pillow. Thank you, audiences, for actually selecting any items there and helping to support and keeping us in the media to actually educate, warn, and inspire people around the world. Now, let's get to our guest. We're bringing somebody from across the pond in the UK. This is an attorney. Her name is Claire Wills Harrison, and she is a phenomenal individual. I cannot wait for her to educate you on what she's bringing to light, the kind of cases she's using and creating to actually bring justice to all those who have been injured. Say hello to our audiences, Claire Wills Harrison, Esquire.
Hello. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, so where are you right now?
In my house, actually, in a county called Cambridgeshire in England. It's very, very cold here.
Yeah, tell the audience how cold it was. You told us right before we started recording.
I did. It was -3 overnight, and it didn't really get past 3 degrees today. It's very cold, very frosty. Typical January in England.
Well, amidst all the cold there, we're so glad you took the time to actually create a presentation, reach out to us, and allow us to help educate the world about something that has been extremely concerning to you that you were aware of back in June of 2020, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Now, you became extremely concerned about a few weeks after I was just blown away by the fact that Anthony Fauci here in the United States, as a director of one of the divisions of the National Institutes of Health, had put out a memo to the entire world that there was a singular drug, one and only, an experimental antiviral drug called remdesivir that had never been FDA approved before, ever, or found safe and effective against anything. He declared that this one and only drug was going to be the savior for all COVID-19 hospitalized Americans. And he was only going to use that drug in every hospital. It was the only one going to be allowed to be used in the entire country of the United States for the first year of the pandemic. Only for me to understand and realize in May of 2020, a few weeks before you became aware of a big problem there in the UK, I actually was able to determine that not only was Anthony Fauci lying to the United States, he was lying to the whole world and our federal government about how safe and effective this drug was. And it has come to light. I've been able to be a voice, thank God, to make the entire world aware that there is a drug that Anthony Fauci selected that was going to cause acute kidney failure, liver failure, and heart failure in 30% of all people they give that drug to. And he was going to use that drug in hospitals to mass murder a bunch of innocent Americans. And then he was going to lie to the world and tell them they were dying from the side effects of a virus, when in fact the majority of them were actually being killed by being poisoned to death with that drug called remdesivir. It is still, to this day, we are in January 2022. It is still today the only FDA-approved drug, remdesivir, as of their updated NIH chart called Table 2F. You can look it up right now. Look at Table 2F at NIH.gov. Remdesivir is the only listed FDA-approved drug still and we're at 850,000 dead. 90% of those numbers here in America guaranteed have come from remdesivir poisoning, causing acute kidney failure, liver failure, and heart failure, as published in the last 3 months in different journals, medically peer-reviewed journals, in the Cardiovascular Toxicology Journal, the American Heart Association. It's all over the place. The World Health Organization can identify and has data showing that remdesivir is deadly and causes death of tissue and organs in the body that does lead to death. So there is not only is remdesivir a drug of concern being perpetuated on innocent people around the world now, it's also the only drug being used in every hospital in Brazil as of the first week of March of 2021, and they have the second highest numbers of death from COVID-19. Go figure. You've got over 1.5 million people dead in these two countries. 90% of them are dead because of remdesivir poisoning, not the virus. So we have Claire Wills Harrison, an attorney out of the UK. She has every reason not to do this because it's freezing in England. She is ready right now and is coming on the Dr. Ardis show to make you aware that there is something equally evil going on in the UK that was set up by their federal health agencies there in the UK. And we're going to get into that. There is a drug. I just want to go ahead and throw it out there because we're going to get into it. There is a drug called midazolam that she is going to educate us on. How they're using this drug and have been during the early parts of this pandemic. She realized they were using it to mass murder innocent English citizens. It's not only in England, it's going on in Canada, it's going on in other countries. So Claire Wills Harrison, thank you for all you've done, all the research that you've done, all the information you've supplied to us. It is a lot of information, but if someone doesn't warn and bring this to light, it's going to continue. This mass genocide and murder around the world is going to continue. And I know you know that. So please, let's get this started. I want you to educate our audiences on what midazolam is as a whole, because like remdesivir, the world had never even heard of remdesivir before I started letting people know what it was. Dr. Ryan Cole, a pathologist out of Idaho, just to help everybody in the audience and around the world understand how to pronounce remdesivir. Dr. Ryan Cole, this amazing pathologist, said, Dr. Ardis, just tell your audiences to call it Run Death is Near. So, Run Death is Near, remdesivir, that's how you remember to pronounce it. Let's see if attorney Claire Wills Harrison can now help you and us and myself learn more about midazolam and why it is so dangerous. All right, so let's put up the first slide. And then you, Claire, are going to teach us about midazolam. So midazolam, you'll see it on the screen, how to spell it. She's given some keynotes here about midazolam. I want this slide to go down. And Claire, I want you to be on the screen, and I want you to teach our audiences about midazolam.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having me. The slide that you can see on the screen now is part of a PowerPoint, which, as you've mentioned, I sent you. So it briefly explains what midazolam is. It's important to know that it's in a group of medicines called benzodiazepines. They work by slowing activity in a person's brain, generally to allow relaxation and decreased consciousness. Now, in the UK and probably around the world, midazolam injection is used mainly before medical procedures to cause drowsiness. It's also sometimes used as part of conscious sedation. So we have dental surgeries in the UK that will use it for things like teeth extraction. We also use it in the UK for epilepsy in a different way and at different strengths. And it's also used in ICU when people are on ventilators to keep them in a sedated state. Bizarrely, it's used widely in the UK for palliative care, as it's believed to be the drug of choice to decrease agitation and anxiety for people that are at end of life. Sadly, however, in the wrong hands, this drug can be misused very easily, and it can lead to deaths. And as you probably know, in the US, midazolam is one of a number of drugs that is used in lethal injection executions in some of your states. So we have it used in palliative care in the UK and used to kill people in the US. That hit is the severity of this drug. On that PowerPoint, there is a link that will take you to Medline Plus There's a number of links all over the website that explain exactly what midazolam is, what the dangers of the drug are, what it's used for, different dosages. And I've also included examples of NHS palliative care guidelines so that you can see it is an official drug that is used in this country. So that's a very brief overview, sorry, of what midazolam is. But I think the point to get across to your viewers is that it can be a very, very dangerous drug. And one of the particular side effects of this drug is that it decreases respiration and can cause somebody to fall into a coma, and it can lead to their death. And it's important that your viewers remember that as we go through the rest of the presentation.
All right, so I want the world to know. She just said that it's used in the United States, this drug called midazolam, in some states as the lethal injection drug or a part of the cocktail to end people's lives that are on death row. All right, that's how dangerous this drug is. It is deadly. In fact, I've read articles about midazolam where it was considered and removed from certain states as the drug of choice as a part of the cocktail for lethal injections because they considered the way it killed the people to be too inhumane, like too dangerous in the way they died. It was too traumatic on the body. Isn't that interesting that they removed it from some of those states? All right. Midazolam is dangerous. All right, Claire. What should the world know about midazolam? What are they doing with this thing in the UK?
Okay, so slide 8, I believe it is on the PowerPoint. So we're jumping around a little bit, but it's worth me touching on this first. Is some evidence of our House of Commons Health and Social Care Committee. It's the oral evidence of a meeting that took place via Zoom. Contained in that document are some discussions about enough medications that are required to keep people comfortable, quote, at the end of their life. Now, there's some very interesting questions in that document, and I've numbered them on that slide. Question 376 to 379. Now, they allude to a large order of medicines by the UK government, including morphine and midazolam, along with syringe drivers to use that medication. Bearing in mind, I've just said that this midazolam is respiratory depressing. This is a document, this was a meeting to talk about medicines to order in preparation for a supposed large COVID wave, a supposed respiratory illness. And they were ordering in these medicines, which are respiratory depressing, particularly when they're given in combination. Now, one of the questions on that document, you will see, I think it's question 377, Dr. Luke Evans, who is a member of parliament in this country, asks, or mentions, that a good death needs morphine, midazolam, and syringe drivers.
Say that again, Claire. So I want you to start with a doctor asked this question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Dr. Luke Evans, who is a member of parliament in this country, also a doctor, he asked a question to Matt Hancock, the then Secretary of State for Health. And he said, have you got enough medications to ensure a good death for people? The morphine, the midazolam, the syringe drivers. Now, because he said a good death needs morphine, midazolam, syringe drivers, it's evidenced in that document. It might not be quite phrased like that, but it's pretty near. Now, when you look up the Greek translation of euthanasia, that is a good death.
Wow. And this was in April of 2020, correct?
This was in April of 2020. The date's on the slide. It was the 17th of April 2020, and that date's quite key, and that will become clear as we go through a little bit further on. So this is just evidence that I'm providing for your viewers, because this is quite well known now in the UK. It's been picked up on quite some time ago, and some questions raised about it, which we've never had any answers to. But I've just put it in there so that your viewers can see that this conversation took part between members of the UK government.
Now, this has come to light that the UK and a lot of the citizens there are aware of this meeting and this question about a good death medications. Do we have enough of those? How has England responded to that? Did it bother them? Is it bothering them?
It's bothering a lot of people. Following on from this document coming to light, and testimony from lots of people that have been affected by this, there's been quite a big outcry. There's been documentaries made. There have been official letters, open letters written to the now Secretary of State for Health, who is Sajid Javid in this country. Sadly, no answers have been given. I've reported certain cases to the police. I've reported, as part of a wider investigation, this midazolam issue to the police. At the moment, nothing has come of it. But I believe that there are many, 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 many thousands of people that have been affected by this. I myself have had contact with, either in person, telephone, or by email, over 1,000 people, and I am just one person. I know there to be many more. I'm not trying to say that every doctor, hospital, and care home have been complicit in this. That is not what I'm saying at all, and I think that's important to state. But we do seem to have a very, very serious problem with the use of this drug since April 2020. Historically, it has been used, many years before lockdown, but it seems to have got worse during lockdown, and particularly in the early part of lockdown. And I believe it was used as a driver for deaths that were then labelled as COVID-19.
Amen to that. I've said that about remdesivir too, and like you, I've been exposing this nonstop for a year and a half now about remdesivir being the number one cause of death in hospitals. I have doctors from around the country telling me it's exactly what's happening to these patients in hospitals here in America. Yet this drug is still, a year and a half later, in December of 2021, is now updated as still the only FDA-approved drug. It's amazing that they're still getting away with this. I get cries all the time to me. When are these people going to be held accountable? When are they going to stop these protocols? It's ridiculous. All right, so they have been aware, the citizens of England have been made aware, that this doctor in April of 2020, April 17th to be exact, asked about, is there enough drugs to provide a good death, which by definition, by the Greek term euthanasia, actually means a good death. You just taught me that. I didn't know that. All right, so this is in reference to euthanizing people, innocent people. And they're aware of this conversation. They're aware of this document. Are there things they are unaware of? Is there an even further, deeper stage you would like to set for my audience in the world stage? Let's do it, because they need to know more.
Yes, so as I've said, the UK are aware of that document and lots of other information that's contained on the back end of my PowerPoint. What I don't think many people, aside from myself and others working on a few cases that we've got going forward, are aware of, are why perhaps that conversation took place between the Department of Health Secretary Matt Hancock, Dr. Evans, and others. And I would like to take your viewers, and indeed the UK viewers that are going to watch this, back to before that meeting happened. And we're going to go back to the 3rd of April, and we're going to talk about, first of all, I believe this has not been seen publicly, and it's very hard to get hold of, a document. This is a document produced by NICE. That is the National Institute for Clinical Excellence in the UK, in case your US viewers do not know what NICE stands for. What I want to make clear about this, what's really interesting about NICE, is that NICE, it is an executive non-departmental public body sponsored by our Department of Health and Social Care, who Matt Hancock was the head of, who Luke Evans was talking to in that House of Commons meeting. Okay, so this is the department formerly run by Matt Hancock, which is now run by Sajid Javid. So as the Secretary of State for Health, they are accountable to Parliament for the health system, including NICE. And it's important for your viewers and the UK viewers to know this, because given that they're accountable, I believe that they've got some answers to give about this NICE document that we're going to talk about, okay? NICE is supposed to be an independent organisation that was set up by our government. It's effectively an agency of our National Health Service, and it develops guidance and recommendations on the effectiveness of treatments and medical procedures. Okay, so I think it's slide 4 that the NICE guidelines is on that I sent you. I don't know if you want to call that up. If you do, that's absolutely fine. So
It's on the screen.
this
Is that
is
the one?
NICE. That is the one. That was published on the 3rd of April 2020. Now, I know that you couldn't get into my documents, and you've had a look for this document and you were unable to find it because you mentioned it to me. I think you got the updated version.
We do.
And I've promised you that I will send over to you this version.
So hold it up to the screen. So Jay, show her, and I want you to hold up the paper copy because I think you have it there. Now, now just go ahead, Claire, and just describe that this is a hard document to find. This is the original, and we're going to make sure it's a part of the show. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So this is the hard copy original document, the NICE guidelines that I'm going to talk about. Okay, and this is for, you can see it's probably backwards. I don't know if it is on your prescribing rapid guideline managing symptoms, including at the end of life, in the important word here, community, not in hospitals, community. That will become relevant. So this is very difficult to find. It's been updated. It was updated in October 2020. And if you go looking for this document now, you can't get it. It just says this has been updated and is superseded by new guidelines. And that's why I think this document probably hasn't been spoken about publicly, because it's very tricky to get hold of. I am going to send it to you so that you have got this, the whole PDF, and your viewers will be able to have it, and as will anybody that picks up my PowerPoint as well. So that will be coming to you.
I want the whole world to know I'm going to take that document and we're going to scan it, and we're going to actually have it on the drartistshow.com's resources page so everyone around the world can download it. Now, can you take my audience through, the whole world and your audience in the UK, can you take us through what's in that document that everyone needs to know? Touch a few points there.
Yep.
Go ahead and read it to us.
Yeah, really happy to. It's obviously quite a number of pages in it, so I won't go through every page. You and your viewers can do that.
If there's page references or numbers on there, you can say on page 3, go here. Page 5, look here. Right? We'll edit this out. You can just do that.
Definitely, because I've got. Yep, no problem. Okay, so this NICE document makes clear, first and foremost, that midazolam and morphine can be used in the treatment of COVID-19 in the UK. Okay, so this document, which is produced by NICE, which is a non-departmental public body sponsored by our Department of Health and Social Care, okay, tells doctors that they can use these drugs to treat agitation or breathlessness arising from COVID, a so-called respiratory illness, okay, when these drugs, particularly in combination, as I've said, depress respiration and can lead to death. I believe they hasten death, okay? So the cases that I've worked on and that I've seen, these drugs have also been used, and this is important, when someone has not been diagnosed with COVID-19, but has something else wrong with them. We might be able to touch on that later as we speak. Sorry, that's my phone, excuse me. I'll start again. So hopefully we might be able to touch on those sorts of cases later on, depends on time. So as we know, midazolam is a benzodiazepine which works by slowing activity in the brain to make you relaxed and decrease your consciousness. And as I've said, it's widely used in the UK in palliative care. I've also said in the hands of an experienced practitioner, it can be misused and lead to deaths. What I really want to make clear about this drug is even at high doses, it does not have the properties to render somebody insensate, so they can still feel pain. It's not a pain relief. It just renders you unable to cry out or to move, but you can still feel pain. Okay, so some key points on this document. I think it's a crucial document in helping to piece together why there was such an uptick in midazolam prescribing in the UK in the early part of the 2020 lockdown. That guidance was issued less than 2 weeks after we entered our first lockdown, so not very long at all. And so key points, I'd like to go to page 13, paragraph 6. In the guidelines, it states treatment for breathlessness. And on page 14 at paragraph 6.5, it's clearly stated that opioids and benzodiazepines should be given in combination to patients, even if their breathlessness is only moderate. So it's not severe, it's only moderate. So as we know, it's going to depress the respiration even more. So it's going to make moderate breathlessness a lot worse. At para 6.5, again, same paragraph, at the date of publication of that guidance, it is made clear that opioids and benzodiazepines did not have a UK marketing authorization for moderate or severe breathlessness, and that their prescribing for the same in the UK would be regarded as off-label. So they weren't licensed for that treatment. At page 18, paragraph 7, we've got further recommendations for managing anxiety, delirium, and agitation. And at para 7.3, it again states, consider trying a benzodiazepine to manage anxiety or agitation. Para 7 again makes clear that at the date of the guidance, midazolam did not have a UK marketing authorization for use in anxiety or agitation, nor for the route of administration suggested in the guidance. So what we have here is an official document from NICE directing clinicians to use drugs off-label to treat COVID, a so-called respiratory illness, but not only that, to use the very drugs that are going to depress the respiration of those patients further. So what's further concerning about that is the duty in the UK that's placed onto doctors and others when they prescribe medications off-label, as they would have been here if they were following this guidance. So prescribers have to be satisfied that there are going to be no severe adverse reactions. Well, I would call depressing respiration and getting somebody into a coma or dying is quite a severe adverse reaction. They should also be satisfied that there are no other drugs that wouldn't meet the needs of the patient in a better way. And they're supposed to discuss the risk benefits of unlicensed or off-label medications with the patient or their advocate before prescribing them to make an informed decision. So my question, aside from why are NICE putting this guidance out 2 weeks into our lockdown to use these drugs and these drugs only, my other question is, were people who were prescribed midazolam and opioids off-label told about the risk to their life due to those medications and the respiratory depressing effects? I don't think that they were, from what I have seen and what I have witnessed.
Okay, so I just want my audience to know we have a bunch of them here in America and around the world. I love how you say respiratory. That is awesome.
Sorry.
You could say it a billion times. I want to make sure everybody knows she is saying respiratory. For those who know, COVID-19 is considered a respiratory illness. It makes it hard for you to breathe. It lowers your oxygen saturation. In this document, NICE is telling you that midazolam and morphine suppress respiration. How in the world could this possibly be, using any common sense of any kind? Why would you take someone that you know is going to have and struggle with respiratory abilities to breathe? Why would you prescribe or suggest the use of a drug or a combination of two drugs that suppress your ability to breathe? It doesn't even make any sense. So when Claire is saying this is of concern, it should be of grave concern. Now I have a question right out the gate. Thank you for touching on, highlighting some of these points so far, and there's other ones. Keep going. Why do you think they've made it so hard to find this document?
There's a little laugh there from me. I would think because mainly, it contains some quite damning evidence that this wasn't very good advice. Um, I also think it's because maybe people are unaware that the Department for Health in this country are responsible, in part, for what NICE puts out. So that puts our Department of Health and Social Care in the frame for either negligent advice, bad advice, or unconsidered advice. I mean, I can understand that some kind of guidance may have needed to have come out, in the early days about treatments, but I do believe that this document has been taken down because it forms a very good evidence base as to negligence.
Absolutely. And the concerns around informed consent, I just want you to know most of the world is not being given informed consent around current vaccines being promoted for COVID-19 around the world, nor for the drug therapies inside of ICUs, in hospitals. Advocates, family members, medical power of attorneys, these people aren't even allowed to speak on behalf or converse on behalf of their loved ones. Informed consent's being destroyed. Patients' rights in hospitals and care centers are being destroyed. So I absolutely am convinced, without even looking or knowing as much as you probably do, if informed consent was designated to any of these individuals. So anyway, keep going. Sorry, just want to touch on that. Anything else from that document the UK needs to know, because they don't know. They can't find it. They can find it on the drartistshow.com now, anywhere you go that's related to Claire. Follow Claire around the UK. She's going to have that document in her pocket. She'll hand it to you.
It's very well hidden and saved in lots of places. Let me tell you that. I think there's lots of more in that document that your viewers and the UK viewers will be able to look at and piece together in addition to what I've said. What everybody else in this country, and indeed the international viewers, might want to know is that our MHRA, which is our Medicines and Health Regulatory Authority, they're the people that said it was okay to roll out the COVID-19 vaccines in this country. So yeah, whether you set any store by what they say, I don't know, but they themselves issued advice on benzodiazepines and opioids in March 2020, just before this guidance from NICE came out, and it's diametrically opposed to this NICE guidance. And it says, reminder of risk of potentially fatal respiratory depression. And it reminds healthcare professionals that benzodiazepines, co-prescribed with opioids, produces CNS depressant effects, increasing risk of sedation, respiratory depression, coma, and death. And they are told to only co-prescribe where there is no alternative, and if necessary, at the lowest possible dose for the shortest duration. I can absolutely tell you that that has not happened.
I can absolutely tell
Why?
you that they're murdering people. And that is super disturbing that they made that declaration a month before this April 17th NICE document. I just want you to know, Claire, my father-in-law, the whole reason why I even got into this entire world movement of warning and educating people and creating this show for any reason is because a hospital in Dallas, Texas killed my father-in-law, murdered him with morphine alone. And they called it palliative care. It's going to reduce agitation, is what they said. And I said, no, it's not. It's going to paralyze his diaphragm and his heart, and you're going to murder him right in front of the family. That's what you're going to do. It was awful. It was horrific. They convinced the family that this is what was best for him as a part of their hospital protocols. I'm just going to let you know, morphine kills you. You overdose somebody on morphine and midazolam, you're going to die. That document or declaration you just made by the MHRA on midazolam or benzodiazepines and opioids, they can be fatal. They are fatal. You can overdose and kill people on these things. That's why they use them in lethal injections. And they declared that in March of 2020, only to see that directly opposed statement by NICE on April 17th, 2020, a month later, that this should be suggested as a treatment for COVID-19 and respiratory distress when it causes respiratory distress and death and can be fatal. This entire thing, this whole narrative is disgusting to me. I hate it.
I'm so sorry about your father-in-law, and it has happened to so many people. I actually think it gets worse if you move on to slide 5 on the PowerPoint. Sorry, we it gets it it gets worse as far as I'm concerned. Slide 5 contains a statement from our General Medical Council, which we call the GMC in London, and they're in England. Sorry, they're like the regulatory body for doctors. Okay, they issue a joint statement that says that it's entirely appropriate to follow the NICE guidelines, and that they have no concerns. These are a body that are supposed to regulate doctors, but they have no concerns whatsoever, despite opioids and benzodiazepines not having a UK marketing license, despite the MHRA having put out that warning in March, which has existed for a long time. You can find those warnings all over the internet, on lots of sites. Our GMC don't have any concerns. And in fact, within that document, it says GMC prescribing guidance is clear. You may prescribe unlicensed medicines where this is necessary to meet specific needs of the patient, and there is, and here comes this phrase again, sufficient evidence. I suggest there wasn't 2 weeks into the so-called pandemic, sufficient evidence of that drug combination working. You must give patients sufficient information to let them weigh up the risks and the benefits. It's really interesting. You said in the US, people can't get into hospitals, the families, the advocates, the carers. It's exactly the same here in the UK, and I am sure in many other countries. There is no informed consent. Further key points in this statement, which are very disturbing, in my opinion. The General Medical Council clearly state that it is entirely appropriate to follow those guidelines and have no concerns, as I've said. They clearly state that sedation and opioid use should not be withheld for fear of causing respiratory depression.
That is the most disturbing quote on that whole document. You're right. And Jay, can you throw up the actual document, the joint statement, so our audience can see it? We're actually going to put this on our site too. Don't worry. Everybody will have access to this document. Can you put up that joint statement, GMC? Just show the document. There you go. There it is. Okay, great. Now, this is going to also be on the drartistshow.com website under the resources page. We'll have it there for you. All right, Claire, back to you.
That is the one. That is the statement. I think it's also disturbing that you'll find in that statement that the GMC go on to say, we want practitioners to know that it is entirely appropriate to follow the NICE guidelines and that we would have no concerns about prescribing decisions based on them. It is a red light to go and prescribe this medication because the GMC have said you don't need to be concerned about it. So you've got possibly inexperienced practitioners, possibly people in a panic because of the narrative that's coming out of the media, and they've got a red light to prescribe this medication. And this document really deeply concerns me from the GMC.
Me
it's
too.
A green light to use midazolam and morphine or other opioids in this way.
I just want the world to know there is no antiviral benefit or immune supportive benefit from morphine or midazolam. There is none. But these are the two drugs they're prescribing and suggesting for COVID-19, a respiratory illness.
It's crazy. Unfortunately, it goes on to get worse.
Come on, Claire. It's getting worse. Oh.
Getting worse, yeah. So slide 6 of the PowerPoint is a BMJ, British Medical Journal. I don't know if your viewers would be familiar with that. I'm sure they will.
They're familiar with the British Medical Journal, yes.
Okay, so the guidelines from the BMJ are shown on slide 6. I should mention actually that GMC statement that I just touched on was produced on the 14th of April, so 11 days after the NICE guidance, and that the BMJ guidelines that we're now looking at were published on the 20th of April.
Can you put it up on the screen?
Perfect. Okay, so this is the BMJ guidelines. that were issued in support of the NICE guidelines and in support of the GMC statement. And the date of these were published was the 20th of April. You can just see that at the top of the screen there. The GMC statement, as I've said, was the 14th of April, the NICE guidelines, 3rd of April. So these are all within a 10 to 14 days of each other. So these would have been pushed out to all trusts in the UK, hospital trusts in the UK, filtered down into doctors, into doctors' surgery. They would have been circulated widely. So these guidelines really summarise the key points from the NICE and really just reiterate them in support of the management of symptoms of COVID, and again in the community, not in hospitals, in the community. It states it's a series of rapid guidelines developed in collaboration with NHS England. So it's clear, NICE is, as I've said, part of NHS England. So it's clear somebody within NHS England at the top has put these guidelines together. It really just goes on to repeat the recommendation of prescribing opioids and midazolam for breathlessness and anxiety, and at the dose range given in the NICE guidelines. So what we have here with those three documents, which I don't believe have ever been seen before in the UK, are three major clinical bodies, all within a few days of each other, stating the same prescribing advice for the same drugs. They're all moving as one, okay? We already know, as you have said, COVID-19 is respiratory illness. We know what these drugs do, and there are no, as you said, antiviral benefits of using these drugs. It therefore seems completely incongruous to me for NICE, the GMC, and the BMJ to support our clinicians in prescribing off-license medication in the form of opioids and benzodiazepines together, which compromise somebody's ability to breathe. It's wrong, and it has led, I believe, to a great many deaths.
I'll just tell you right now, just based on the documents and the information, this is a murderous cocktail of harm, period. No benefit whatsoever, just harm. And I don't know if you're ready to do it yet, but what I'm interested in right now, where you've taken me, I am curious to know what happened to you in June of 2020, which is just like a month and a half after all this. These three entities were declaring all the same statements around a deadly cocktail, in my opinion. How did this come to light to you in June of 2020? What started bothering you or drawing your attention to this?
So as you've said, I'm what we call in England a lawyer. I think you call them an attorney. And I work in a field of law that's called succession law in the UK. And sadly, that means I deal with what happens when people die and all the things that lead up to when people die. And I also have a particular focus on capacity issues in my work, and it takes me a lot into medical decisions because capacities and informed consent are tied together. So I have a lot of clients in care homes and that are in hospital, and what happened was they started to die, and they started to die quickly and in large numbers, and in all cases but about one or two, they all had COVID-19 put on their death certificates, and none of them had ever had a COVID test. They'd been diagnosed on the balance of probabilities, and that's how their death certificates got written up with COVID-19. And I was constantly fighting with the authorities in the UK. So I would speak to the care homes, the doctors. I would say I wasn't happy about the death certificates being written up with COVID-19. I wanted to know, had they had tests, had they been clinically diagnosed? I was told they hadn't, and that people were following the rules now laid down by our government. And it just became of great concern to me because of my clients, and I care about my clients, and they were dying, at 2-3 a week, which is a lot for a small practice, and I'm only a small village practice. And I just couldn't not be vocal about it. And I believed there was something very odd going on, very nefarious. And I made a Facebook video saying what I was seeing happening with the death certificates, which I believe was fraudulent. They were written up fraudulently. After which I was contacted by whistleblowers from care homes, hospitals, all different places who started saying to me, this is what's really going on in care homes. This is what's happening in people's own homes. This is what's happening in hospices. They're being taken off their usual medication. They're being put onto end of life protocols, end of life pathways. They're being given midazolam and morphine. And that's when my journey with midazolam and morphine really started, to be honest with you. And following which, I've been contacted by so many people that have been affected by this issue, that it's obviously deeply upsetting. It's deeply disturbing. I went and did my own investigations into where did all the midazolam go, because what your viewers need to know is that our government ordered 2 years worth of midazolam in March 2020. They already had a year. They ordered 2 years worth on top of that. And in October 2020, when this guidance was updated from NICE, incidentally, there was no midazolam left at a strength of 10 milligrams, 2 milliliters. I've given your viewers a link to actually go and check that for themselves. From our House of Commons questions, you can see midazolam 2019, 500 and odd thousand, October 2020, zero, none left.
This is insane. And I'm very proud of you for actually making a video and just putting it out on Facebook. Has this slowed down? Have they replaced this massive amount of midazolam that's disappeared? Are they continuing this murderous cocktail?
We had a further order in the UK of midazolam a different strength, because midazolam comes in different strengths, okay, for various reasons. So we had a 22,000 pack order from diverted. It was called a French order. There's an accord document in the PowerPoint which alludes to that. That was at a strength, I think, of 1 milligram. So it wasn't at all different strengths. So there was a supplementary order of that. I'm not sure what that was used for, but certainly at the higher strengths, we had run out. There were medicine alerts. We obviously replenish those drugs as part of drug stockpiling, as every country would do. And I'm sure some of the midazolam was used for people that were in ICU for whatever reasons, or were having some operations. But of course, they weren't having operations in our first lockdown because they were all cancelled by our government.
Right.
All non-urgent operations cancelled. So what's really interesting about the period between March and October 2020, when huge amounts of midazolam were dispensed, is where it was dispensed to. And we can prove, because we have a website in this country called the English Prescribing Database, where you can go on and put in any drug and any period, and you can go back quite a number of years, and it will show you a database of actually where that drug was dispensed, right down to the postcode of all the different doctor surgeries. So I undertook that exercise in 2020 because I was so concerned, and I wanted to see where this drug had been dispensed to. And in the main, it was dispensed into the community. It went into care homes, it went into people's own homes, and it went into hospices. There's a graph in the PowerPoint. I'm not sure which slide it is at. I can quickly have a quick look for you. I think it's slide 10. Yeah, so again, this is a well-known graph in the UK now. So this is taken from Open Prescribing. Anybody can go on that as well. But I actually went onto our English prescribing database at the back end of last year, just to check these, to make sure there was no, nothing funky going on with this. So that big long line that you can see there, that big blue line, is April 2020. Okay, that's April 2020, when the NICE guidelines came out, when Matt Hancock and Dr. Luke Evans were having their discussions about good deaths. That's April 2020. That's midazolam for April 2020. May's next to it. You can see May's still quite high. Before then, you've got, like, you can see, because it's going back a number of months and years. So you can see that massive spike in April 2020. That actually matches our so-called first wave in the UK. And out of hospital prescribing in that month for midazolam increased by more than 100%. It was picked up by one of our national newspapers. They did do an article. It was the Daily Mail. That's on slide 11. And if your viewers do want to click on and read that, they can. And Professor Policino was quoted in that article as saying that he believes that this was the reinvention of something called the Liverpool care pathway in this country, and that it has hastened people's deaths with this out of hospital prescribing. Now, if your viewers don't know what the Liverpool care pathway was, that is an end of life pathway that was used in this country and is supposed to have been defunct until 2015. Now, under the Liverpool care pathway, you had all your food and your fluids withdrawn if you were thought to be end of life. It was an awful death, really, because you know, you're dehydrated and then you're put on to midazolam and morphine, and it turns end of life into euthanasia. And Patrick Policino, I believe he's now part of the clergy because he was so disgusted with the medical profession over it, was a great advocate for speaking out against this, and it was supposed to have been done away with in 2015. I wholeheartedly believe that in 2020 it came back on steroids, absolutely on steroids.
So our audience will be able to click that link. We'll put this whole PowerPoint presentation on our actual website. That actual article opens up. Just of interest, that was published on July 11th, 2020, that article. So it wasn't very soon after that April spike of 2020 where midazolam was sent out to communities around the UK. Pretty disturbing.
Yes, it is really disturbing. But I was not the only one that was concerned about this. And again, I don't think this BMJ article has been flagged up before, and it's really, really interesting, because it came out on the same day as the BMJ statement came out on the 20th of April. And it was a letter to the editor, and it was reproduced, and it was a letter that was signed by 11 highly regarded and qualified doctors and professors. And these doctors and professors raised concerns about the advice contained in the NICE guidance, which of course was supported by the GMC. Now, if it's all right with you, I would like to read part of that letter as it adequately sums up my concerns about the guidance from NICE and the subsequent GMC and BMJ statements made in support of the same. So if you're happy for me to, I'll read. It's quite a chunk, but I think it would be really useful for me to read it out.
Claire, our audience would love it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So I'm reading from the letter now, and as I say, it is on the PowerPoint in full. I'm only going to read a part of it. So, to quote, we fully understand why shortcuts to the normal NICE guideline procedure were necessary in order to produce COVID-19 guidance rapidly, but we are concerned that uncritical use of this guidance may create unintended risks for people with suspected or actual COVID-19 infection. Under general advice for managing COVID symptoms, NICE recommends when managing key symptoms of COVID-19 in the last hours and days of life, follow the relevant parts of NICE guideline NG31 on care of dying adults in the last days of life. This includes pharmacological interventions and anticipatory prescribing. The earlier NICE guideline NG31 referred to was based on studies carried out in people in the advanced stages of cancer. However, in that NG31 document, the evidence base was so poor that it did not publish detailed recommendations for drugs and doses. And here comes the crucial part. We are unaware of more recent high quality research evidence that NICE could have used to produce such specific drug and dosing recommendations for COVID-19 patients. These doctors are telling you that they have no idea how NICE have come up with the recommendations that they have, and that what they are referring clinicians back to is a guidance sheet for people in the advanced stages of cancer where the evidence base was so poor that that didn't even publish drugs that should be used and at what dosages. So they go on to say, we have further specific concerns because NICE recommends codeine and morphine for cough and breathlessness, and codeine is of course converted to morphine, and this can lead to little or no effect in some patients or severe opioid toxicity in others. And although morphine is recommended in several places, only once is there mention of switching to oxycodone. Given the propensity of COVID-19 to lead to acute kidney injury in 4 to 31% of cases, we suggest oxycodone could be considered as an alternative drug for symptoms, including pain, especially for those at risk of renal impairment or in the older population. Although small compared to the literature on morphine for breathlessness, the evidence for oxycodone is growing. Moreover, the effect of renal impairment leading to adverse neurotoxic effects, including acute delirium, is well established. Thus, by you focusing on morphine, it leads to increased use of midazolam to deal with the agitation and delirium. This situation can be avoided if oxycodone is used instead. In other words, you don't need to use morphine and midazolam. They are not the only drugs. There are alternative drugs. And if you remember, doctors are supposed to consider that when prescribing off label. Okay. This next statement is really important. And I can't stress enough that I believe that these 11 highly qualified, regarded doctors were trying to warn people and warn other doctors. They say the combination of opioid, benzodiazepine, and/or neuroleptic is used in specialist palliative care settings for symptom control and for palliative sedation to reduce agitation at the end of life. It takes great skill and experience to use palliative sedation proportionately so that extreme physical and existential distress are palliated, but death is not primarily accelerated. NICE guidance states sedation and opioid use should not be withheld because of a fear of causing respiratory depression. If COVID-19 infection were uniformly fatal, this would be an acceptable statement. But for people not previously known to be at the end of life, there is the risk of unintended serious harm if these medications are used incorrectly and without the benefit of specialist palliative care advice. Now, when you consider that midazolam and morphine was used in care homes and in the community, there was no specialist palliative care advice. There were no considerations of other drugs to use. There was no use to using midazolam and morphine to treat COVID. It had no benefit. It supposedly may have helped with breathlessness. I doubt that, given its respiratory depressing effects and agitation.
I love the fact that these 11 doctors actually were honorable enough to stand up and actually make a public statement of some sort against the guidelines that NICE had put out. I think that's very honorable. I hope that they have been counseled, reached out to, have get applauded, because they actually were, I think, trying to warn the individuals in power and citizens and innocent people around the country, for sure.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that came out on the same day as the BMJ, the the very same publication issued their own statement in support of the NICE guidelines.
Yeah, I don't find that ironic.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, the rest of the presentation goes on to really, in the PowerPoint, give the back end of what happened after that, which we already know about in the UK. We know about where the midazolam was dispensed. We know about the House of Commons oral evidence. We know about the Daily Mail article and Professor Pollicino. What your viewers might not know, and I don't know if you've suffered a similar thing in America, is that, of course, during the same period that all of this was going on slide 12, I've provided your viewers with absolute proof that at the same time, we had blanket do not resuscitate orders being placed on care home residents. So we have do not resuscitate orders, we have withdrawal of usual medication, we have people being put onto nil by mouth for very spurious supposed risks of aspiration. They weren't diagnosed by a speech and language therapist who is supposed to find out if swallowing is a risk. They were remotely diagnosed in some cases by Zoom appointments with our GPs because they stopped going into care homes and people's homes, and we couldn't even get into the surgeries, if we needed to. There's a really, really good publication called As If They Were Expendable, and that's on, or As If Expendable, sorry, that's on slide 13. That absolutely states everything that I stated in my video of June 2020. That absolutely confirms what I said, what I was told, what I saw actually happened. Blanket DNRs, the government's failure to protect older people in care homes, the overreach of people's human rights, our own Care Quality Commission, who NICE are supposed to advise, by the way, also did an interim and a final report. But what's absolutely staggering about both of those reports and the Amnesty report is nothing in the public arena has happened. No public inquiry, no ministers held to account, no questions seeking to address just what has gone on here. And when you consider how many people died in care homes in the first wave, it was 18,000.
Yeah, it's on that slide.
More.
There's a couple things. This blanket DNAR, do not resuscitate order to be blanket is insane in March of April of 2020. That you're not going to do it. And then midazolam and morphine are showing up in those care centers. More than 18,000 people died. You see it on that slide. Confirmed or suspected of COVID-19. On the next slide after this, 25,000 were discharged from hospital to care homes in March of 2020. That's insane. And then they put a do not resuscitate order on those care homes. All right, this is disgusting.
Yeah, it is disgusting. And I think people know about bits of this in part, but when you put it all together and you say, look, what happened? These people were sent out of hospital into care homes. There were blanket DNRs. There was overprescribing of midazolam and morphine. There was no visitors allowed, no oversight, no family, nobody going into these homes. It paints a very unpretty picture, I'm afraid. And some serious questions need to be answered about what's gone on here.
Yeah,
given the level.
Yeah, I've actually talked about it many times that from the beginning of May 2020, I knew Anthony Fauci designating remdesivir as the drug of choice was actually going to be more complicating and deadly to the elderly. I said they're going to target the elderly first. These drugs are going to destroy the kidneys, liver, and hearts of the elderly who already have comorbidities. This looks exactly the same thing, like it's on an international scale. They targeted the elderly in these care homes, put a blanket, do not resuscitate, purchased a ton of midazolam, pushed it out to the community, to these healthcare or to these care centers for the elderly. It's just a very disturbing, and I don't think it's over. The whole reason, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there if you're not going to surmise this yet, the whole reason why they had to kill these people in hospitals in America, and the reason why I think they had to put these things and enact these things and put in a blanket DNAR for the elderly in these care centers was to mass murder people and then call it COVID-19 so that they could sell you on a vaccine program later and scare the crap out of everybody under a huge mass murder plot, which is what they're doing with these drugs, in my opinion. It was just to scare everybody that there's this deadly virus when, in fact, they were murdering you with another drug. And they figured out they could do this long time ago using the guise of palliative care and using those drugs to suppress the central nervous system, stop people from being able to breathe, stop their hearts from beating, and then call it death by COVID-19. That is my opinion. It's how it reads. It's the whole narration. Sorry, Claire, go ahead.
I think I have to say that I agree with you. Sorry, I've got an itchy nose. I do agree with you. It's very dark. It's very difficult for people to believe that it could be that sinister. But we have to look at the evidence that's before us, and we have to look at the people that this has affected. As I've said, I'm not saying everybody was involved in it and that everybody took part in it, but we have a massive amount of people that have been affected by this. We need to look at each case individually, but in all the cases that I've been working on, looked at, been contacted about, the issues are broadly comparable. It's all the same thing: DNRs, nil by mouth, midazolam, morphine, death, within a very short space of time thereafter. Oops, sorry guys, I've just lost you.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so
There?
Claire,
Sorry.
I want to make sure the world knows I have nonstop said the scariest place anybody could go in the United States of America since May of 2020 is going to a hospital. And I've told them to avoid the hospitals, found ways to get advocates for those who are already in hospitals, and we're trying to protect those lives around the planet. I have said, make sure you tell your doctors you do not consent to remdesivir poisoning. Now, the reason why I wanted to even do this show is because people need to be aware and know what to ask for, what to confront their medical professionals with, or people that are managing them in care centers now around the world. You need to be able to ask, and you need to be able to know, is midazolam being offered to me? What are the risks, the benefits? Why are you doing this? Is morphine a part of this cocktail you're about to administer to me? Is remdesivir a part of this cocktail you're wanting to treat me with? I do not consent. And you need to be able to voice this and voice your concerns. And we're going to put this entire PowerPoint presentation. All the articles are going to be on our site for any of you who want to become more educated. The more educated you are, the more knowledge you have, the more power you have to speak and defend your life or the life of your loved ones and stand up to these horrific guidelines. They're horrific underneath the guise of health and management of health. It's awful. Okay, go ahead, Claire. Oh, I want to know. You're an attorney. You building cases here?
Yes, we do have several cases. There are other people that are doing other cases, their own cases, and they're doing it in a different way. We decided that we would go down the individual route. We have several of those. We have barristers meetings very shortly. We're going to go through certain things, obviously, with the barrister. We believe we've got both a civil and a criminal claim, and that we're highly confident we're going to win on both negligence in the civil field of things and gross negligence manslaughter, which is carries a maximum life sentence in the UK. On the criminal side of things, we've obviously got expert witnesses and reports and other testimony and lots of documentation. What we hope is that those few cases that we're doing will serve as a benchmark for the very many others that I think have been affected by this. And we are going forward going to look at the best way to funnel people to a team of people that might be able to, or hopefully will be able to help them to deal with any potential case that they might have. It's very different in the UK to it is in the States. We don't have class actions in the UK. We have something called group litigation. So it's different. But we are looking at, do we need to set up a central hub or a central almost foundation to be able to give people the initial tools to get as much information as they can for their own cases, to then be able to funnel them on to a legal team that hopefully will be able to help on a no-win, no-fee basis, because these are very serious issues. Um, so they are ongoing. Justice at the moment, unfortunately, in every country is hard come by and very slow going. I'm sure you're experiencing it over where you are.
Absolutely.
There's a backlog in the court system. It's very difficult to get things through at any speed. It's very difficult to get things through judges. I'm afraid there's some serious issues with our judiciary, I believe, as in this country, as I believe there are
In
all
every
over the
country.
world.
Yep.
Let's put it like that.
Everywhere. So you have a small practice, a small attorney firm, law firm. I'm sure you can't handle all the cases there in the UK, so I'm glad you guys are working towards this being a benchmark and example, and then putting together some kind of team of attorneys for the thousands of people who have been affected. I mean, thousands. There's been thousands of you that have been taken advantage of, and loved ones who have been murdered under the guise of these nice guidelines. And I love that we're helping to get information to them that can empower them, help them with their own cases. And I'm proud of you, Claire, for taking this on from the beginning.
Thank you. That's really kind. I think it's really important for your viewers and for our viewers that we just state this is still going on in the UK. Whereas it was more in a care setting at the beginning, it's now, sadly, we're getting reports of this happening in more and more in hospitals. I'm guessing that you've got a similar problem with remdesivir, like you've spoken about. We've also got remdesivir in the UK now. We've got issues around that. And as your viewers may or may not know, we have mandatory vaccination, COVID vaccination in this country now for our care workers working in care homes and our NHS staff. So we lost 60,000 care workers at the end of December last year, because if they hadn't taken the vaccine, they were sacked. Most of them hopefully will become further whistleblowers. In April, the 1st, April Fool's Day this year, we're estimated to lose around 126,000 of our NHS staff that aren't vaccinated, because we now have a law that says no jab, no job if you're in the NHS. It won't surprise anyone to know that, given that, in December, our government closed their new contract, their new tender for midazolam. One has to wonder whether that's going to be used as a result of all of these lack of staff. On the slide 15 and slide 16, it alludes to that, and it puts the tender on there. And your viewers will also notice we have the absolutely ridiculous situation now that we're using hotels in the UK as care facilities because there isn't enough staff, and we're asking council workers. So they would be people, any council worker, they might be a refuse collector, to help out, because we've got a lack of care staff, because we sacked 60,000 of them, because that's really going to help look after people, isn't it, and meet their needs. And we're going to have the same issue again in April. So this is still ongoing. I think it's something that people need to be aware of. Like you've said, you need to be able to say, what are you giving to me? What are the side effects? Are there any other drugs? I need to know of the risks and benefits. Informed consent, as we know, doesn't seem to exist anymore about anything, but it is your right to have that, and to be able to say yes or no after receiving all the benefit and risk profile of any medication that you are given. So yeah, it's still ongoing here, as you said, and I think you've still got the remdesivir issue, and it's sadly likely to go on for some time, unless we all know what our rights are and know what these drugs do.
And I think the whole world just needs to know and use some common sense. The lay people in all the countries around the world, and including in the UK, like you just mentioned, it should be amazing to you when you hear that hundreds of thousands of NHS and healthcare workers are leaving their jobs rather than getting the vaccine. This should be very telling. These are the people in the healthcare divisions of government or federal health agencies or inside your healthcare systems like hospitals. If they are unwilling and unsure about the vaccines themselves, why are you okay getting the shots when the healthcare workers see a problem with them? It doesn't make sense to them. They're willing to lose their jobs. It is the same here in the United States. There have been some federal judges actually who have actually said you are not going to fire healthcare workers because they're not getting the vaccines. You have to reinstate them. That's happened in several states here recently in the last couple of months, which is phenomenal. But they did try that, and they were successful during the year of 2021. Healthcare systems in America telling nurses, telling doctors in their hospitals, you have till X date to get your vaccine or you're fired. And then our own federal government is incentivizing all hospitals in this country as they show tier numbers or percentages of vaccinated staff members. They get bonus payouts. At 80% of staff vaccinated, you get this much money each month for free. If you have 90% of your staff that you can show, you get more money. If you can show us you have 100%, we'll give you more free money. This is what our federal health government is doing to allow healthcare systems in America and CEOs and board members and administrators to go like this. It's okay if you walk or if you get sacked or fired. That's okay. We're about to get free money anyway. So this is really disgusting. The whole thing's disgusting, actually. So I just want people to understand. People are willing in the healthcare industry that know how the body works. They know how to heal people. They know how to treat people. They understand the physiology of the body and how the body works. The healthcare workers who are educated in health are willing to risk their jobs to not get these shots. They are not convinced they are safe. The things they are seeing, the data that's being reporting, is disturbing enough to them to give up their livelihoods. Why would you sign up to go get it when you know you're not as enlightened or educated as much as they are in health and in medicine as a whole? You should just ask yourself, rationalize and try to understand and surmise, why would people be willing to walk who know more about health than I do? Why are they willing and standing firmly that they do not trust these shots? Why should I trust these shots in myself, my parents, my elderly parents, or my children, for God's sake? Why should I be okay giving these shots to them? Okay. Sorry, Claire. There are some references that you put in your PowerPoint slide. I just think that the majority of the people in the UK are learning a lot of stuff right now. People around the world are being opened up to a whole bunch of criminality, I think, disguised as healthcare and healthcare measures against a pandemic. And they need some resources. You have a slide. One of the last slides here has some things on there. Do you mind if we show it to your audience or to the audiences?
Not at all. That's just my own groups. There are many other people that are talking about this issue as well.
Jay, can you put up on the screen that last slide on this presentation? It's got some references there. Anybody watching this, take out your phones and screenshot this screen. So if you need references of where you can find people, where you can find Claire Wills Harrison for sure is going to be busier than she's ever been, and she thought she was already busy by the time this show launches. Okay. All right, Claire, anything you see the websites on the screen. Do you want to take our audience through what those are or anything?
Yeah,
and even beyond these references, anything you think audiences should go and look at?
I will do that, actually, because you reminded me. Thank you very much. So unfortunately, as with anybody that speaks truth, I am deplatformed. I've been banned from Twitter, I don't know how many times. So those
you look like a terrorist, Claire. You look
obviously,
so...
yeah. Highly regulated profession, but obviously. So yes, so I've put the two Telegram groups. One's the lawyers group and one's my broadcast channel. We do have a sister website, Awaken World. It's part of the Lawyers of Light group, but it does lots of different things. But this PowerPoint and the documents will be on that website. There is a very early interview that I've referenced that I did around, I think it was July 2020, that people might, if they want background to this, listen to. It is an hour, but it was quite an informal chat with a guy that I did. So the link for that's there. Your viewers will find loads and loads of information. We have a publication, an alternative media publication in this country called The Expose. They are deplatformed everywhere, but they have their own Telegram group when I can send you the link for that. And they also are an online media. So they're like an online newspaper, if that makes sense.
Yes, I love it.
Now, they have done some amazing articles on midazolam. I've worked with them quite a lot, actually, but they're very well researched, and they link to all the official documents.
Can you spell it?
So
Can you spell expose?
yeah, expose. So EXPOSE. So X and pose, but as one word.
Very good.
So the expose, but it's the expose because it has a little hat over the E. I think they're trying to be French. So yeah, you can go and look at all of their back catalogue online of articles. They actually were literally in the last 2 weeks, I think they've been deplatformed now again by PayPal. So they can't, because they operate on donations, and their PayPal has just been taken away. They've been banned off of Twitter. They're banned off of Facebook. So they operate a Telegram channel, but they do have the online at the moment newspaper, and they've got a number of articles on there that are really, really interesting connected to this subject. You can go and hunt for my original Facebook video if you really want to, but I will apologize in advance because I was so upset when I made it that I was crying. So that is still doing the rounds. I think it's had 1.2 million views or something like that, or it had back in 2020. So that is still available. It's been shared on multiple platforms. If you type my name in and midazolam, it normally comes up. There is an ongoing complaint with our police at the moment. Your viewers may be interested. That has been submitted by a group of other people that covers, amongst other issues, this midazolam issue. That is a live investigation with our police force over here. Whether or not anything's going to come of it remains to be seen, because, as I've said, justice is very hard fought at the moment. I believe if you want to go and find any information about that, you can go on to the Telegram channel of Dr. Sam White. He is one of our NHS doctors that recently won a case against the GMC for trying to say that he could never go on social media again because he spoke out about masks and jabs. He was successful. He got his ban overturned. So he runs anybody that ever speaks any truth now lives on Telegram, I'm afraid. So that's where you'll find us all. So if I think of any others, I'll drop you an email and you can share them with your audience. I'm more than happy to do that.
We'll definitely do that. I want to know, do you have a call of action for the world and for all of your UK audience?
Yes and no to some degree, because the biggest call of action is know what's being put into your body. Ask for the risk benefits, ask for the ingredients, and that applies across the board. It does not just about midazolam. You've got to ask the same about the so-called vaccines, which are not vaccines, okay? But I think at the most basic level, we need to ask ourselves, can we really trust our governments? Can we really trust mainstream science? Can we really trust the media who are funded by pharma and others? What really is going on here? My call to action would be open your mind, consider the evidence before you, and ask yourself, is everything really all that they are telling you?
That is perfect. Claire, I love everything you've done. Thank you for being a voice of reason and logic. Thank you for being disturbed and creating a video where you cried. I don't know if you've seen any of my videos. There's been lots of times I've been up on stage and I'll just lose it. I'll start crying because it's overwhelming, the amount of people that are being innocently harmed. I mean, they're innocent people who are being harmed and killed, murdered, diseased, traumatized, families being fractioned, entire societies being discriminated against. It's been horrific what they have done underneath the guise of this COVID-19 pandemic. It's been horrific, and it's been overwhelming. Trying to be a warrior for others and a warning for others and a reason and a voice for others, it has become extremely overwhelming at times. And every morning I wake up with the feeling, how many people can I help or save today? How many people can I actually speak truth to that are going to actually respond or resonate with that, and it's going to open their mind? It has been very overwhelming at times, and I'm sure it has to get overwhelming to you also. I can tell the sincerity in you. I'm sure you did cry. I hope everybody goes and downloads it. I hope there's another 1.2 million views of that video after they watch this interview, because I love people that are standing for others. And I had in my home with my wife and I invited a whole bunch of people into our home a couple weeks ago, which included Dr. David Martin, that include Mickey Willis with the Plandemic and his wife. And we celebrated her birthday that evening. And Dr. Peter McCullough was there with his wife. And I actually said to all of them, there were 71 people there. And I said to all of them, I said, I just want to thank you all for standing with me to help save as many lives as possible. And I lost it crying. And then Christiana Northrup walks up to me, why are you making me cry? You're not supposed to make me cry. And it's just this wonderful, wonderful time in life that there's a group of people who actually do care enough to be a voice for others. And you're one of those. And thank you for standing for all of the UK people. Thanks for doing all the research into this. Is there any other documents or things you want to dispel right now or show the audience that we haven't shown? We know the whole PowerPoints are going to be available with all the links. We'll make that available to all of you. But is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap this up?
I don't think so today, but I am always more than happy if I come across anything in the future. I've turned up a couple of other things today that are quite interesting, but I need to do my research on them. But I'm always happy to supply you with them. I just want to say thank you to yourself and all of the other doctors out there that have stood up at this time, knowing that they would probably lose their jobs or get criticised or get taken down by the mainstream media. If it wasn't for people like you guys, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. But I do have to say that I wish that I had parties like you have in your house with all those people. I tend to have 2 cats and my husband, so it's not nearly as interesting in my house.
Well, we'll have you in our home when we can get you over here to the United States and some of this international crap ends. So there's too much tyranny and confusion and unknown of what may happen if you decide to travel around the world right now. But for sure, you're a part of the team now. Thanks for being a part of it. I really appreciate it. We need people like you and more of you, and we're trying to gather them all up and put them in one place from time to time. But maybe one day we can have you at the home too. It'll be phenomenal. You and your husband and your cats, whoever you want to bring with you. All right. Well, thank you, Claire, for coming on. Please, I want you to give some hope and some love. Last thoughts and comments to the world.
Personally, I believe that this is a massive shift in our consciousness, and that what we're seeing now is just all the darkness floating up to the surface. It's been extremely difficult for everybody, I know that, but I do believe we are going to come out of this better as a human race, having learnt the lessons and never ever letting anybody repeat this or do this to us again. And I just want to say, keep faith, keep hope, trust in yourselves, trust in God, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you today, Dr. Ardis, and thank you for having me on your show.
Claire, you did a great job. You actually told me how nervous you were when you first signed on to this call, but you didn't look nervous at all. You're a pro. I'm very proud of you. And good luck with the cases. Keep me updated. I would love to actually bring you back on and bring the world up to speed on what you're working on there in defense of all those people in the UK. Thank you for all you do on their behalf. I'll thank you for them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, now I'm Dr. Ardis. This is the Dr. Ardis Show. Everybody send love to Claire. She gave you all of her Telegram info and stuff. Send her a whole bunch of I love you messages and support her. All of us that are trying to defend humanity need that support and love. It encourages us and it motivates us. So thank you for that. Claire, thank you for all you do. Good luck to you and your husband. Stay warm there in the UK because it's really cold today. I'm Dr. Ardis. Our final sponsor for this show, just don't forget the Dr. Ardis Show. You can go to thedrardisshow.com, go to the Shop Now button. We've also, with Dr. Thomas E. Levy, if you haven't seen it yet, we've produced three of them. 10 for 10 segments, which is how to actually beat and reverse hypertension naturally, how to beat myocarditis, which is a published, printed side effect of all of the COVID-19 vaccines. He's a board-certified cardiologist. He's going to teach you how to beat it and how to reverse it naturally. And then number 3, how to actually beat long haulers' COVID symptoms. We call it and title it Chronic COVID. It's one of the 10 for 10 segments we've released there. It's a whole new platform we're doing there on the Dr. Ardis Show. Please go there and support us and support those you love And we're trying to produce as many resources for you, just like Claire is for all of you around the world and in the UK. All right, everybody stay informed. Everybody stay informed. Do your own research. Read over this PowerPoint. Please share this with everybody you know. Claire, say goodbye to the audience.
Goodbye. Have a great day wherever you are.
All right. We love you, audience, and we love you, world. We'll be back. I'm Dr. Artis. Bye.